Hello everyone, my name's Matt, and recently I gave myself the challenge of putting together a $2,000 ITX gaming PC featuring an RTX 4080 Super, which was a little difficult seeing the GPU alone takes up half the budget and its size is very far from small form factor. With that being said, I think I was able to put together a super solid 4K gaming system with amazing performance and very few compromises. So without further ado, let's talk about all the parts going into this PC. So I'm actually going to start by talking about the case, as in an ITX build like this one, it's going to determine a number of other factors with the build. After looking at a bunch of options, I decided to go with the Cooler Master NR200 in black, which is priced well at just above $80. At around 18 liters in volume, it is bigger than a lot of ITX cases, but compared to a standard ATX mid-tower like the Corsair 4000D, it is pretty darn small. Plus, it being a little bigger means I was able to fit in a big air cooler along with this absolutely massive GPU. It's relatively easy to work in for an ITX case, but still was a decent challenge to fit everything while keeping the build looking clean. With that being said, I think this case is pretty awesome with features like toolless panels, mesh on almost every side, and a clean modern aesthetic. Overall, I think the NR200 is a super solid pick for an ITX machine rocking powerful hardware. Moving on to the CPU, I decided to go with what is considered the best gaming CPU on the market, which is the Ryzen 7 7800X3D. The 7800X3D comes in at around $355 and is offering 8 cores, 16 threads, along with turbo speeds up to 5 GHz and a whopping 96 MB of L3 cache. This is an absolute beast of a gaming CPU. With that being said, it's also pretty powerful for stuff like streaming and even light video editing. Now, the system was planned out before the release of the Ryzen 9000 series, so I was worried that the new chips were going to beat this one out, but it looks like we'll probably have to wait for the new X3D chips until we can crown a new best gaming CPU. In terms of a motherboard for our CPU to go into, there aren't a ton of ITX AM5 boards, especially ones that can fit into this budget. After looking at all the options, I decided to go with the ASRock B650i Lightning. This board comes in right at $200, and I think it's the perfect fit for this build. It handles the 7800X3D no problem and offers a good number of features including multiple M.2 slots, built-in Wi-Fi, and pretty good back panel I/O. With that being said, this board pretty much just supports the hardware we're putting in it right now and doesn't have a ton of room for future expansion, which is to be expected from an ITX board. Moving on to the cooler, I needed something that would be good enough to cool our CPU while also fitting into the budget and case. What I went with is this Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE. Coming in at around $35, this cooler might honestly be one of the best value per dollar coolers on the market. It's got dual fin stacks, dual 120mm fans, tons of copper heat pipes, and doesn't look half bad either. With that being said, it's also a pretty large cooler and is probably the biggest one I could have fit into this case. Also, most importantly, it did a fantastic job of cooling the 7800X3D, and if you are interested in temps, make sure to stick around to the benchmark section of the video. In terms of memory, I went with a good value pick in the form of a 32GB kit of G.Skill Ripjaw's S5 DDR4 memory running at 6000 MHz CL36. With that being said, I will be linking / tagging the CL30 version of this same kit as it's only like $5 more and is a little bit better. 32GB is more than enough for gaming, and 6000 MHz CL30 is considered the sweet spot for pairing with a Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Also, with a price tag of $105, this kit fits nicely into the budget. In terms of storage, this is an area where I did have to compromise a little bit in terms of capacity. With that being said, what I got is a 1TB Samsung 990 EVO. This is a very solid Gen 4 drive with great speeds and a decent price at $90. 1TB should be plenty to start off with, but I will say that going for a 2TB out of the gate probably would have been more standard at this budget, but just wasn't possible in this build. With all that being said, the second M.2 slot is actually pretty easily accessible from the back of the case, so upgrading to more fast NVMe storage in the future should only take a couple of minutes to do. So now let's talk about the graphics card. What I went with is the NVIDIA RTX 4080 Super, an absolute beast of a graphics card in terms of both performance and size. Coming in at $1,000, this is the most expensive graphics card that I've had the opportunity to play around with, and experience its performance firsthand was amazing. It has a ton of raw rasterization power, along with DLSS 3.0, NVIDIA's 3rd gen ray tracing cores, AI acceleration, and 16GB of video memory. Now, going for a 7900 XTX will save you about $100 and net you similar to slightly better performance. With that being said, going with the 4080 Super gives you better ray tracing and all the other NVIDIA exclusive features. The 4080 Super I'm using here is the Founders Edition, which is an absolutely massive triple slot design featuring an all metal cooler, which is actually all blacked out and looks extremely nice in my opinion. As you can probably see, this is about as big of a card as I think would have fit into this build, but even though it is such a tight squeeze, temps were surprisingly good, which again you'll be able to see in the benchmark section of the video. To power the system, I needed an SFX unit, and to my surprise, there were actually a good number of reasonably priced units that could power the system. See, even though I am using high-end parts, the estimated wattage for a system like this is actually under 600 watts. With that being said, I did want at least 100 watts of headroom, and after looking at all the options, decided to go with the Seasonic Focus SPX 750. This is a 750 watt 80 plus platinum rated unit, which came in at around $110. It's fully modular, and I'm always surprised at the size of SFX power supplies when I haven't used one in a while, as they are considerably smaller than standard units. Putting this PC together was definitely not easy, and I would only recommend a build like this to experienced PC builders, as you have to be really thoughtful and careful with how and in what order you assemble everything. I haven't built an ITX system like this in a while, so this was a bit of a challenge, but after about an hour of assembling and cable management, I was left with this, a super compact, high-end gaming PC with decent cable management. Some things to note is that I was only able to include one of the CPU cooler fans because of clearance issues, but I was able to include the back case fan along with a top 120mm fan. This 120mm fan at the top was included with the case and has a grill which is super nice in preventing cables from getting in contact with the fan blades. I definitely was worried about cooling performance, but at this point it was all built and was time to be tested. Speaking of testing, I decided to test a number of different games, all at 4K, to see what kind of performance the system could put out. First, let's start things off with Minecraft. I tested in creative mode, just flying around at 4K with 24 chunk render distance, fancy graphics, and using the complementary shaders pack. Even with this high of settings at 4K, the system was able to put out a 152 FPS average with 1% lows of 56. This is pretty solid performance in my opinion for Minecraft with shaders, but if there's a specific way you'd like to see me test Minecraft in the future, let me know in the comments below. Next up is Elden Ring, which is a game that recently had a big DLC release and a game that I've recently gotten into. I tested this game at 4K with max settings and with ray tracing also set to max. Doing this resulted in a locked 60 FPS, which this game is capped at, which looked amazing. With that being said, there were a few areas tested that made the FPS drop into the 50s, but overall, being able to max out this game at 4K is pretty darn good in my opinion. Next, I tested an esports game in the form of Apex Legends. I test this by hopping into a team deathmatch game and by setting things to 4K max with every slider turned up as high as it goes. Doing this resulted in a 138 FPS average with 1% lows of 98. This felt and looked absolutely amazing. With that being said, you could easily play around with the settings in this game to get a locked 144 FPS or even 240 FPS depending on your monitor and your needs. Next up is Cyberpunk 2077, which I tested using the built-in benchmark at 4K with both the Ultra preset and the Ultra Ray Tracing preset, both of which I left DLSS to automatic. Doing this resulted in a 100 FPS average with 1% lows of 84 for the Ultra preset and a 79 FPS average with 1% lows of 68 for the Ultra Ray Tracing preset. I personally would leave Ray Tracing enabled as you're still getting well above 60 FPS, and it's awesome to see the system is able to play Cyberpunk at 4K Ultra settings with Ray Tracing enabled no problem. Moving on to an easy to run esports title in the form of Rainbow Six Siege, I tested this game using the built-in benchmark at 4K Ultra preset. Doing this resulted in a 285 FPS average with 1% lows of 210. This shows that pretty much any easy to run esports title like Valorant, League of Legends, and Rainbow Six are all going to run fine at 4K Ultra with an average above 240 FPS. The next game tested was an older AAA title in the form of Borderlands 3, which I tested using the built-in benchmark at 4K Ultra settings. Doing this resulted in a solid 94 FPS average with 1% lows of 79. This is solid performance in my opinion, and it looked absolutely amazing at these settings. Finally, I tested Helldivers 2 by using the 4K Ultra preset, but setting the resolution scaling to native and by hopping into a random mission. Doing this resulted in a 72 FPS average with 1% lows of 66, which looked and performed very smooth. With that being said, if you want more FPS, there's obviously tons of room to adjust the settings, but for me, I would personally be happy to play with this kind of performance. So as you can see, this system handles pretty much any game at 4K Ultra settings with 60 plus FPS, and even is able to max out a lot of games at 4K. In terms of temps, I was actually surprised to see the system was running surprisingly cool, with the GPU never going above the mid to upper 60s while gaming, and the CPU never going above the mid to upper 70s. This was great to see and put to rest any worries I previously had about cooling for this system. Overall, this system is definitely a bit overkill, but I think for $2,000 it is offering pretty good price to performance, especially considering it is in the ITX form factor. With that being said, I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this build in the comment section below, and if you had $2,000 to spend on an ITX gaming PC, what parts would you go with? All parts mentioned in this video are going to be linked and tagged below. These are affiliate links that I earn a small commission from, and YouTube may compensate me for using the shopping tags in this video. All in all, I think this was a pretty successful build, but I also think it's time to wrap this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Oh, and as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.